2:30 a.m., January 17th, 1991. First Lieutenant Tom Drew flies his AH-64 Apache attack helicopter at 50 feet above the Iraqi desert. No lights, radio silence, night vision goggles showing the terrain in grainy green. He's been flying for 2 hours through enemy territory, 90 miles into Iraq, completely alone except for 7 other Apache and 4 Air Force MH-53J Pave low helicopters. Ahead in the darkness, 2 Iraqi early warning radar sites, Soviet-designed, connected to Baghdad's integrated air defense network. If those radars see coalition aircraft coming, they'll vector MiG-29s to intercept. They'll alert SAM batteries. The entire Iraqi air defense system will light up. Drew's mission: destroy both radar sites simultaneously, before Baghdad knows they're under attack. He breaks radio silence, party in 10. 10 seconds later, 8 Apache unleash 27 Hellfire missiles, hundreds of rockets, thousands of 30mm cannon rounds. In 4.5 minutes, both radar sites are obliterated. General Norman Schwarzkopf would later say the Apache had plucked out the eyes of Iraq's air defenses. 22 minutes after Task Force Normandy fired, nearly 100 coalition aircraft roared through the 20-mile-wide gap in Iraq's radar coverage and struck targets across the country. Operation Desert Storm had begun, and it started with 8 Army helicopters doing what everyone said was impossible. This is the story of Task Force Normandy, the joint Army-Air Force mission that opened the war, the crews who flew deeper into enemy territory than any helicopters in history, and the 15-hour operation that earned them distinguished flying crosses 34 years after they fired the first shots. August 2, 1990. Iraq invades Kuwait. Within weeks, coalition forces deploy to Saudi Arabia. Operation Desert Shield. By January 1991, over 500,000 troops are positioned along the Saudi-Iraqi border. General Norman Schwarzkopf and his planners know that if war comes, the air campaign has to start perfectly. Destroy Iraqi command and control. Eliminate air defenses. Achieve air superiority in the first 24 hours. But there's a problem. Iraq's KARI integrated air defense system, French-designed, Soviet-equipped, covers the entire country with overlapping radar coverage. Early warning radars along the border can detect coalition aircraft the moment they cross from Saudi Arabia. Those radars feed data to sector operations centers, which coordinate SAM batteries and direct MiG fighters to intercept. If coalition aircraft try to penetrate Iraqi airspace with those border radars still operational, Iraqi defenses will see them coming. Losses will be catastrophic. The solution: destroy the border radars first. Create a gap in coverage. Let strike aircraft flood through before Iraq knows what's happening. The original plan, codenamed Instant Thunder, called for dropping Army Special Forces into the desert. They'd infiltrate on foot, plant explosives on the radar sites and blow them up. But that plan had problems. Special forces would need hours to reach the targets, maybe days. During that time, Iraqi forces might discover them, and even if they succeeded, there was no guarantee they could destroy both sites simultaneously. If one radar survived even briefly, it could alert Baghdad. Planners needed a different approach. Something that could strike both targets at exactly the same moment. Something that could assess damage in real time and deliver follow-up strikes if needed. Something that could get in, destroy the radars, and get out before Iraqi forces reacted. That's when Lieutenant Colonel Dick Cody proposed using AH-64 Apache attack helicopters. Lieutenant Colonel Dick Cody commanded the 1st Battalion, 101st Aviation Regiment, 101st Airborne Division. His unit deployed to Saudi Arabia on August 17, 1990, among the first American combat units in theater. When Cody heard about the radar site mission, he knew Apache could do it. The AH-64 was designed for exactly this kind of deep strike: low-altitude penetration, night operations, precision weapons, the ability to hover behind terrain and pop up to engage targets. But there was skepticism. Helicopters operating 90 miles behind enemy lines, at night, with no ground support. If something went wrong, mechanical failure, enemy contact, navigation error, the crews would be on their own, deep in hostile territory, no rescue coming. And there was another problem. The mission required hitting both radar sites simultaneously. The sites were 70 miles apart. If one team attacked and the other was delayed, even by minutes, the surviving radar could alert Baghdad. The element of surprise would be lost. Cody needed help with navigation. The Iraqi desert was featureless. No landmarks, no roads, just sand and darkness. Apache pilots could fly low using terrain-following radar, but finding two specific radar sites 70 miles apart in total darkness required precision navigation that the Apache didn't have. That's where the Air Force came in. Colonel George Gray commanded the 1st Special Operations Wing. His unit operated MH-53J enhanced Pave low helicopters, massive transport helicopters equipped with terrain-following radar, forward-looking infrared sensors, and most importantly, global positioning system navigation. GPS was brand new technology in 1991. Most military aircraft didn't have it yet, but the Pave lows did. They could navigate to exact coordinates in total darkness with pinpoint accuracy. Gray proposed a joint mission. Pave lows would lead the Apache to the targets using GPS. Once in position, the Apache would destroy the radar sites with Hellfire missiles and rockets. The Pave lows would provide navigation, electronic warfare support, and combat search and rescue if any Apache went down. It was unprecedented. Army and Air Force helicopters operating together on a deep penetration strike mission. Nothing like it had ever been attempted. But when Cody and Gray briefed the plan to General Schwarzkopf, the general had one question. "Can you guarantee 100% success?" Cody and Gray didn't hesitate. "Yes, sir." Schwarzkopf approved the mission. If Saddam Hussein didn't leave Kuwait, helicopters would start the war. The unit was named Task Force Normandy, after the 101st Airborne Division's D-Day jump into France during World War II, symbolically linking the mission to one of the most audacious airborne operations in history. But before they could execute, they had to train. From September 1990 through January 1991, Task Force Normandy conducted classified training in the Saudi desert. Night flying at 50 feet above ground, navigation with night vision goggles, coordinated attacks on simulated targets, live fire exercises with Hellfire missiles and rockets. The crews were hand-picked, experienced, the best Apache and Pave low pilots in theater, and they trained obsessively. Every detail mattered: fuel calculations, time on target coordination, communication procedures, contingency plans for every possible failure. One major challenge: fuel. The mission was over 400 miles round trip. Apache don't have that kind of range with a full combat load. Normally, they'd need to refuel mid-mission. But setting up a forward arming and refueling point inside Iraqi territory was too risky. It would require support aircraft, ground crews, fuel bladders, all deep in enemy territory. If Iraqi forces discovered the refueling point, the entire mission would be compromised. Cody came up with an innovative solution: external wing tanks. The AH-64 had never carried wing tanks before. It wasn't designed for them. But engineers rigged a system that added 1,500 pounds of fuel capacity. It made the helicopters heavier, harder to maneuver, but it gave them the range they needed. The trade-off: each Apache would carry fewer weapons. Instead of 8 Hellfire missiles and 38 rockets, they'd carry 8 Hellfires and only 19 rockets. plus 1,200 rounds of 30mm ammunition. It would have to be enough. January 14, 1991. Task Force Normandy deploys to Al-Jouf, a remote airfield near Saudi Arabia's border with Iraq. The final rehearsal had gone perfectly on January 10th. Every aircraft hit its timeline. Every crew knew their role. Now they waited. The UN deadline for Iraq to withdraw from Kuwait was January 15th. If Saddam didn't comply, war would begin. Task Force Normandy would fire the first shots. January 15th came and went. Saddam stayed in Kuwait. President George H.W. Bush authorized military action. H-hour, the official start of the air campaign, was set for 3 a.m., January 17th. Task Force Normandy would launch at midnight, 2 hours before H-hour. Hit the radar sites 22 minutes before the main strike packages cross the border. Give the Air Force and Navy time to exploit the gap in Iraqi radar coverage. Midnight, January 17, 1991. Al-Jouf Airfield. Lieutenant Colonel Cody leads the white team out first. 4 Apaches, 2 Pave lows. Their target, an early warning radar site in far western Iraq. 12 minutes later, Captain Newman Shufflebarger leads the red team. 4 Apaches, 2 Pave lows. Their target, a second radar site 70 miles east of the first. Both teams fly in total blackout. No navigation lights, no position lights, just night vision goggles and the green glow of instrument panels. The Pave lows lead. Their terrain-following radar maps the ground ahead, automatically adjusting altitude to stay 50 feet above the desert floor. The Apaches follow in trail formation, maintaining visual contact through night vision goggles. Total radio silence. If Iraqi forces detect radio transmissions, the mission is compromised. For 2 hours, they fly deeper into Iraq than any helicopters have ever penetrated enemy territory. 90 miles, no roads, no landmarks, just endless desert and darkness. The Pave lows use GPS to navigate to precise coordinates. 30 miles south of the targets, they give the Apache a final position update. Then the Pave lows peel off and loiter, ready to provide combat search and rescue if anything goes wrong. The Apache continue alone. Each Apache team splits into 2 pairs. White team's 4 helicopters position themselves half a mile apart, forming a line facing the radar site. Red team does the same 70 miles to the east. They hover low, 4 miles south of the targets, hidden behind terrain, waiting. Through thermal imaging sites, Apache gunners scan the radar installations. Electrical generators glowing hot. Communications buildings. Radar antennas rotating slowly. Vehicles, troops moving around the sites. Both teams are in position, synchronized, ready. At 2:38 a.m., First Lieutenant Tom Drew, flying Apache number 976 in white team, breaks radio silence. Nearly 100 coalition aircraft, F-15Es, F-16s, F-A-18s, Tornado GR-1s, F-111FS, roared through the gap in Iraqi radar coverage. They struck targets across Iraq, airfields, command centers, communications facilities, SAM sites. F-117 stealth fighters had already penetrated Iraqi airspace before Task Force Normandy attacked, relying on their radar-invisible design, but even they benefited from the destroyed radars. Iraqi air defense coordination was disrupted. Response times lagged. The integrated network was blind in critical sectors. By dawn on January 17th, Iraq's air defense system was in tatters, and it started with 8 Apaches destroying 2 radar sites in 4.5 minutes. The mission wasn't just tactically successful, it was strategically critical. If those radar sites had remained operational, they would have detected the first wave of coalition aircraft. Iraqi controllers would have vectored MiG-29s to intercept. SAM batteries would have activated. Anti-aircraft artillery would have opened fire. Coalition losses on the first night could have been catastrophic. Dozens of aircraft shot down, hundreds of aircrew killed or captured. The air campaign derailed before it even started. Instead, coalition losses on the first night were 14 aircraft, tragic, but far fewer than predicted. And most were lost to lucky shots or mechanical failures, not coordinated air defense response. Because Task Force Normandy had blinded Iraq at the critical moment. The crews originally received air medals with V device for valor, appropriate recognition for a dangerous combat mission, but some felt the awards didn't match the significance of what they'd accomplished. Lieutenant Colonel Cody, who retired as a four-star general, spent years advocating for upgraded awards. In May 2025, 34 years after the mission, 15 Task Force Normandy crew members were finally awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. The citation reads, "The 8 crews of Task Force Normandy fired the first shots of Desert Storm, leading to the destruction of the Iraqi radar and ground control sites, and officially kickstarting the Allied air campaign. Their outstanding dedication to mission accomplishment is in keeping with the finest traditions of the military, and reflects great credit upon themselves, the 101st Airborne Division Air Assault, and the United States Army." 34 years. That's how long it took for the Army to properly recognize what those crews accomplished. Better late than never. Task Force Normandy's success proved several critical concepts. First, helicopters could conduct deep penetration strikes against strategic targets. The mission profile, 90 miles into enemy territory, total radio silence, precision strikes, safe return, had never been done before. It opened the door for future deep attack operations by Army aviation. The men of Task Force Normandy went on to distinguished careers. Lieutenant Colonel Dick Cody retired as a 4-star general, Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, the second highest position in the Army. Tom Drew, Newman Shufflebarger, Lou Hall, Dave Jones, all continued serving, many for decades. But they never forgot January 17th, 1991, the night they flew into Iraq and started a war. In interviews over the years, the crews have been modest. They emphasize the training, the planning, the teamwork. They credit the Pave low navigators for getting them to the targets. They credit the mission planners for designing a flawless operation. What they don't talk about is the courage it took to fly that mission. Think about it. You're a helicopter pilot. You're flying 50 feet above the ground in total darkness through enemy territory. If your engine fails, you crash. If Iraqi forces spot you, you're dead. No fighter escort, no support, 90 miles from friendly lines. If the radar sites see you coming, they alert Baghdad and the entire Iraqi Air Force scrambles to intercept. And you volunteer for it anyway, because the mission matters, because other pilots are depending on you, because if you don't destroy those radars, hundreds of coalition aircrew might die on the first night. That's not recklessness. That's calculated courage. The kind that comes from training, confidence in your aircraft and your crew, and belief in the mission. Task Force Normandy is one of the smallest yet most successful joint operations in modern military history. 12 helicopters, 24 crew members, 4.5 minutes of combat, 100% mission success, 0 losses. It set the tone for Operation Desert Storm. Precision, overwhelming force, technological superiority, joint operations, flawless execution. Every coalition aircraft that flew through that 20-mile gap on January 17th owed their safety to 8 Apache crews and 4 Pave low crews who went in first, who plucked out the eyes of Iraq's air defenses, who proved that helicopters could strike deep and strike hard. First Lieutenant Tom Drew's radio call, "Party in 10," became legendary. It marked the beginning of the Gulf War, the first shots of Operation Desert Storm, The moment when months of preparation and training turned into action. And in those 10 seconds before the Hellfires hit, 24 crew members knew they were making history, knew they were doing something that had never been done before, knew that hundreds of lives depended on them succeeding. They succeeded perfectly. If you served with Army Aviation or Air Force Special Operations during Desert Storm, share your stories in the comments. And subscribe to Gulf War Chronicles for more untold stories from the war. Until next time,